Taking on an older home requires going into the purchase with your eyes wide open to the benefits and the challenges of living in and maintaining an older structure. I definitely love my historic home and many of its features, but I will say that when we had the house inspected before buying, we watched for items that we'd need to quickly upgrade or treat with special care until we determined whether replacing them was necessary or even possible. Some of those items have to do with electricity. Now let's start by talking about knob and tube wiring. If your house was built before 1950, there's a chance it may have an older type of wiring. In the basement, look up. You may notice wires running through porcelain cylinders or tubes inserted through the floor joists, with porcelain knobs placed strategically to keep the lines taut and secure, preventing them from touching the wood. This type of wiring does not have a ground wire. The wire itself is often insulated with rubber, which can break down, become brittle, and break off over time. While this type of wiring is not inherently dangerous, and there is no code that requires its complete removal, a degrading system may need to be removed and replaced at some point. While average costs for this can run from $3,000 to $8,000, more complicated installations may range into the mid-teens. Another thing to consider with older wiring is its ability to support our modern electronics-heavy household needs. These houses weren't wired with multiple televisions and computers and gaming systems and other high-demand electronics in mind. The service panel and circuit breakers will likely reflect that. Upgrading the service panel and associated breakers and wiring may be necessary to better service the electrical needs of your family and their devices. An obvious sign of an older wiring system is the lack of grounded outlets. Now, most of us are used to seeing three-pronged outlets with each plug having two narrow rectangular holes and one semicircular hole for the grounding prong of the plug. In an ungrounded outlet, only the two rectangular holes are present, being the hot wire and the neutral wire, with no ground wire. A properly grounded outlet is considered safer and is much less likely to create a shock or fire hazard should a short circuit occur. In an older home, the inspectors will want to check the outlets to make sure that they're grounded, even if they have three-prong receptacles. There are various workarounds to ungrounded outlets, but the safest approach is to properly ground them by having them rewired by an electrician. It is important and required in some areas of your home, like the kitchen and the bath, to have a ground fault circuit interrupter installed. These outlets can detect when more current is coming in on the hot wire than is exiting on the neutral wire. The interrupter pops and cuts the power to the circuit. When thinking about older homes, it's important to consider safety. That includes understanding if an older home has lead paint. Meet Lee Hager. Lee is a housing rehabilitation program coordinator, and he's here to give us some perspective on this issue. We're in a home now that is undergoing a restoration process, and one of the first things that they want to do is to test for lead-based paint presence in the house. And Lee, can you explain to us what are the dangers of having lead-based paint in your home?
Well, it can cause health problems for children, adults, and even pets.
What kind of health problems?
Children can have low IQ. It can affect their attention span or growth problems and stuff. Adults, it can affect their kidneys, high blood pressure, and pets can get delirious and what have you.
That's really scary. Are there any physical ailments that we might say, oh, that's what's going on?
No, you really can't determine that by just symptoms. You got to really have a blood test done.
And that's why it's so important.
Correct.
What types of homes are candidates for having lead-based paint?
Any house built before 1978.
So how do I know if I have lead-based paint in my home?
You really can't tell by looking. You have to have it tested. There's 3 ways to test it. One is a test kit that you can buy at your local hardware store. Homeowners can do that. A lead inspector can cut out the areas that are painted, send it off to a lab and get tested. Or there's the XRF test, which is an X-ray gun that a local health department or a professional can come and put up to the surface, and it gives you immediate results.
All right, let's back up to the one that the homeowner can do themselves. How does that test kit work?
It's 2 vials that comes in the test kit, and you actually score the wall or the baseboard or whatever that you're trying to test. You score it, get all the way through it, and then you rub this vial on there, And if it turns red, then it's lead-based paint.
Okay, so let's say that a homeowner determines they do have lead-based paint in their home. What can they do about it?
Well, they can correct it themselves, or they can hire a professional.
Now, to correct it myself, what does that entail?
Homeowners are going to just make it safe. You're going to scrape it down to where it's no longer chipping or peeling, and then you'll paint over top of it. If you do it yourself, you're going to want to learn how to do it safely. Making sure that the kids are out of the house, pets are away from it. When I say scraping it, you're going to do what they call a wet scraping. So you're going to spray it with water, and then so the dust isn't going into the air. There's plenty of resources online, or they can call their local city, county, or state, and they'll be happy to help you out. There's also classes out there that they can take to learn how to do it.
Good, so nobody should be afraid of doing it. It doesn't have to cost you a lot of money.
No, it really doesn't. A little bit of elbow grease and some gallons of paint.
Okay, now an abatement process means getting rid of the paint altogether. So if I wanted that bare wood look in my house, that's an expensive process, and it really does require professionals to do it.
Yes, it does, because it takes an abatement contractor to do that. So they're going to cost a little bit more to come in, and because they're dealing with a hazard material.
Good information, thank you.
You bet.
You know, old homes can be a joy, but there are also a lot of considerations, like the presence of lead-based paint. Don't be afraid to lean on the knowledge of professionals when something like this arises to make your PowerHouse not only efficient, but safe as well.